Okay.
So,
You can talk about BBG or her
so
husband.
he was from the father's side.
Yeah.
And his name was Jawahar, the same name as Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India and freedom fighter. But Jawaharlal Nehru was a...
Let's not talk about Nehru.
But I'm just saying
Yeah.
that there was no relationship.
Yeah.
It just happened to be the
Same
common
first name. Yeah.
Jawahar means a very precious stone.
Yeah. Okay.
Jawahar and Hira, these are the
Yeah.
different kinds of diamonds. Anyway, so this Jawahar Singh Gujral, they don't know how, but there were all kinds of stories. I've forgotten the detail, but he was obviously a very good planner, and he ended up claiming
A lot of land.
endless amount of
Yeah.
land. And then he had Amar Singh, Atma Singh, Thirman. He had 4 sons,
Okay.
and including my paternal grandfather.
Okay.
And that, when I was growing up, that land was divided between all the 4 sons.
Uh-huh.
The oldest of all of them was my paternal grandfather.
Yeah.
But, and you have seen him, Papaji, Jaswant Singh. His name was Jaswant Singh. As later on, the stories were told to me, not during his lifetime.
Yeah.
He had, and that was only told to me because my mother was very afraid that I might get the same bad trait.
Yeah.
And she started warning me from the age of 9 or 10 against that. And then I finally said, "What is it, mother?" She said, "Don't ever go." That time kids used to often sit down together in summer vacation and play cards.
Yeah.
And I remember at the age of 6, one day she called me and beat the shit out of me
Yeah.
for playing cards. And I started crying. I didn't even understand what I was being beaten
Yeah.
for. And she said, I think that was something like Flash or those sorts of things. The little kids, nobody had any money. They were putting 1 penny and not 1 paisa. 1 pi
Paisa.
used to be called. And pi is 3 pies made 1 paisa.
Okay. Fraction of a penny.
It was a fraction of a penny.
Yeah.
But she beat the shit out of me, saying, "If you ever gamble, I will do this and I will do that and I will do that." I said, "Okay, never." Anyway, but my father's father, Jaswant Singh, whom you have met,
Mhm.
you have met him. He had a gambling instinct. So he, if I'm to believe BBG, and I have no reason to disbelieve
Mhm.
her, he would quietly go when nobody ever left Punjab to Mumbai and start, what do we call that?
Commodities trading.
In commodities trading and also some stock trading or whatever.
Yep.
And lost left and right. And when he lost that, then he even went and kind of placed his possessions, his land and this and that. Though nobody wanted to admit that, the truth is that our side of the family,
Mhm.
even prior to partition, had lost a great amount of wealth.
Land. Yeah. Okay.
And that I noticed myself because I still remember till the age of 9 when Punjab was intact, his brothers had children, and when their weddings took place, they were much younger than my father.
Mhm.
My father was already long gone.
Mhm.
But whenever there was a wedding, a Gujral wedding, then we would go to different villages. So there was one village called Montgomery, Montgomery.
Okay.
Based on Lord Montgomery.
Okay.
Do you remember Ranjit uncle from Calcutta?
Ranjit.
Yeah. He used to live not very far from us on the Beacon Road or whatever, in a very nice home. Well, you have forgotten, but you were old enough at that time.
Okay.
You were like 5-6 years old.
So how does Mr. Ranjit uncle play into this?
Ranjit uncle, I'm only trying to say is that my paternal grandfather had three brothers. Okay.
Okay.
They were, despite losing all despite the partition of India into Pakistan and India, when these people came over to India, the Indian government gave them, in lieu of the land lost there, some free of charge land.
Good.
But that was in relationship to what their holdings were there. They probably got only 20% of that.
Yeah.
But that 20% was large enough that this one uncle, Amar Singh, and Chacha Ji Amar Singh, we used to call him, because Chacha means the brother of the father, younger brother. He was not my father's younger brother, he was my grandfather's younger brother. But then you also called him Chacha Ji. He managed to send two of his children for studying engineering in America and the other one in England. Ranjit was his name. You used to go there, Ranjit's home at that time.
Okay, I don't remember.
Okay. And Ranjit uncle had a degree in mechanical engineering, which he had done in Sheffield or Manchester or somewhere. His older brother was Gurdam Singh, Gurnam, who ended up, and that all I have memory, when we were living in Rourkela, he was at that time, and he was much older than me, he was at that time the, I don't know the exact title, but he basically was the engineering head of that part of Tata's where they built the Tata trucks.
Oh.
I remember their house because they used to have sugarcane juice there.
Right, right. Now you know that, right? Exactly. So both Ranjit and Gurmukh was his name, Gurmukh Singh. They had studied there, but my grandfather's children couldn't even think of it because the father was very poor by that time.
Right.
He had basically traded. When in the end he only had a home left in Lailpur, that is where we were living.
Yeah.
And I thought always that was his ancestral property. When I was like 5 years later, during discussions open, then my mother explained that even that house was no longer ours. He had mortgaged it in order to pay for his gambling instinct. So what Papaji, Jaswant Singh, what he got in return was a relatively small piece of land
In which part of the India?
in,
Majority garden.
no, in Punjab, in a place called Shahpur.
Shahpur. Okay.
And Shahpur was a little village. And I went to see him twice when I was in engineering school because he wrote many letters to me saying, I want to see you because I tell everybody with great pride that my nephew goes to this, elite university for engineering and nobody believes me. So he wrote many letters to my mother and then my mother said, you better go there.
Yeah.
Went there for one holiday. And I remember that he was living at that time in a mud house with a mud floor. But I loved him a lot.
Oh, yeah.
He was a very, very loving person. And I remember that only one trip to him in Free Punjab, he must have gone with me to every house in that village. Let us say there were 300 homes, just to let them say, this is my grandson and he is going to be an engineer and he studies in India's elite university. In other words, he wanted to restore his status.
His status, some pride, yeah.
Status again.
Yeah.
And so then some of them would ask me what engineering I'm studying. So then I told them mechanical. So he then sat down and wrote it down. He said, they used to ask me, what engineering? And I said, no, just engineering. They said, no, what? And he said, I did not know that there were different kinds of engineers. And then one day he spent time with me to explain to him the difference between electrical, mechanical, civil, like that. Anyway, he was very proud of me and he was very fond of me. And
Okay, let's take a quick break, Eddie.